And well, moving on then, India's defence manufacturing push gets a strong budget boost. Defence Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh says the domestic spending is rising. AMCA bids are nearing closure and key defence deals remain on track. Listen into this exclusive conversation with ET Now's Sumita Kare.
Despite the sort of ups and downs on the trade negotiations part of it, which thankfully has now reached a very satisfactory solution, which is a win-win for both sides. On the military engagement, the defense engagement, we've not had any setbacks at all. In fact, even before this deal, the 10-year defense cooperation framework was signed by the Honorable Raksha Mantri, along with the U.S. Secretary of War, well before this particular signing of the agreement on the trade deal. This particular engagement, therefore, has remained robust, whether it is exercises, whether it is other collaborations. We've, in fact, asked them to provide us some particular types of precision ammunition in the context of Operation Sindoor as an emergency procurement, and that process is also on. So this relationship has not suffered, and we will continue to look at some of their platforms, some of their weapon systems that we actually need. And that principle will apply across the board, whether it is France or Israel or Germany or US. We will obviously look for options that are suited to meet our needs or to meet our capability gaps, and that process will, of course, continue. Yes, so we are very pleased with the allocations. The fact that we've received a 24% increase as part of the modernization budget and an overall 21% increase in the capex budget. Of course, the overall defense budget has also gone up by about 15%, as you mentioned. These are good signs for really expanding the defense industrial complex in this country. For a long time, we've been talking about this. We've doubled down on indigenization efforts. We've tried to ensure that 75% of our budgetary outlays, capex, is spent within the country. We've actually exceeded that target every year, and we intend to continue to sort of exceed that target. So whether either we design and develop and manufacture in India, or in certain cases where the technology is not there yet, we do what you might call a make in India with some technology transfers. Only as a last resort, or as an exception, we'll go for imports. So that transition is showing results in accordance with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision.
Right. So when you talk about modernization and when you talk about manufacturing here in India, components ecosystem and building a solid components ecosystem plays a huge role, given the fact that it really gives value to the smaller players who are part of the components ecosystem. What is your outlook on that front, and particularly in terms of how big you want the components ecosystem be? What are some of the targets that you've kept?
So you approach it in two ways. One is that you try to sort of create these positive indigenization lists. You put it out in the public domain so that people understand that these are the areas where we would like them to focus on building indigenous solutions. In addition, over time, because of the fact that we've been giving such large orders to domestic OEMs, they in turn, in both the PSUs as well as the private sector, in turn tie up with a multitude of vendors to provide the components, and which is why we have, as you would be aware, about 400 odd largish industrial enterprises who have defense industrial licenses, but there's a much bigger supporting ecosystem of almost 16,000 MSMEs, and those are the ones you're talking about. And in my view, what I would really like to see is that these MSMEs get orders downstream, of course, but over time they move up the value chain. Some of those tier one vendors even become OEMs themselves. That is the kind of dynamic system the government would like to develop, leveraging its buying power.
Right, but sir, any percentage that you have in mind as far as the growth of the components ecosystem is concerned?
No, I mean, it's not possible to have so many sort of sub-targets, but as I mentioned, we have an overall target of 75% spent within the country in Indian rupees. And within that, we also have some minimum percentage for the private sector, again, to develop this entire ecosystem.
Right. Right. So let's also talk about the fact that a recent news development has spoken about HAL being out of the bid to build India's stealth fighter jets, the AMCAs. Could you give us clarification on that front, whether they are out, not out, and what is the impact that it's going to have on HAL?
Well, I mean, see, the final decision on this is yet to be taken, so I don't want to prejudge this. But during the pre-qualification process, I can say that 3 have been recommended by the expert committee under a former DRDO chairman, and based on that, the competent authority will take a final view. Irrespective of whether HAL is there or not, let me assure you that there is significant public sector presence even among the people who are probably going to get qualified. In fact, 2 of them have large, in fact, one is on almost a 50-50 kind of a joint venture between one of our public sector companies and...
Moving on then, CBDT has released a draft